Welcome to episode number 2 of Make It Matter podcast. In this episode, we will talk about how to identify your business's unique story and how it shapes everything that you do. Well, hello everyone. This is the Make It Matter podcast. For entrepreneurs and business owners, we believe what you do is so much more than a daily grind. We want to give you strategies that will allow your work to have more impact and resources to help you share your story with the world. So you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Hope you are having an awesome day. Welcome to Make It Matter. My name is Hanju Lee. I am your host, and I am here in the studio with Dave Bruecker.
What up?
Is also our host for Make It Matter. We're part of the Boss Media Group. This is the company that we jam in. Yeah, is that the right word? So we're going to talk a little bit about this question. And the question is, what's your story? I think that might be like the most important question for business owners and entrepreneurs to answer. And it will help you set priorities, even give customer a clear understanding of your identity. And when you feel lost, it could be that North Star to guide you home.
That's right, man. I think that we talk about make it matter. Your story matters. The good and the bad, all the different elements. And especially if you feel like it's Monday and you're just on the road and you're in traffic and maybe in a little bit of a rut. Sometimes people feel like you go to work and it's like you're losing your soul. Or like a soda, I picture that's gone flat. You lost your fizz. We want to get you your fizz back. And we believe the secret is in your story. As you go back and think about the key unique elements of your story. We love to talk movie references, but for me, I take it back to Kung Fu Panda.
Ooh,
I love this movie, man. It's not just for kids. There's some deep stuff. And the whole time he's sitting there wondering if he could be the dragon warrior and feeling like just the opposite. Like he's the furthest thing from any kind of dragon warrior. He's this big fat panda that just feels like completely unqualified for it. But then the big question, what's his story? And you look at some of these key story elements that define him. And I love at the end, he says, I'm not just a big fat panda. I'm the big fat panda. It could be that simple, that twist in perspective once you realize some of those qualities that are unique, that make you different, that you bring to the table can completely change how customers see you and what value you bring to the work.
I just love the title, bro. You are more than a brand. So we're going to talk a little bit about branding, things like that. And as you and I were talking before, we want to be more of a human, just like the last episode we were talking about, rather than more of a brand.
Yeah, branding does have to do with your identity and how you're introducing yourself to the world. But I sometimes joke that brands are the new human, you know, and that's how, dude, this is my brand. This is how I introduce myself, the Hanju Lee brand. I'm like, come on, there's something false in that. Now, we do want your identity to be clear. We do want your customers to know how to connect with you, but we hope we can do that in a more human way. That's what Boss Media is all about.
I like that a lot. You are more than a brand.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope we get that into your soul.
Yeah.
And that it inspires you and revitalizes the work that you do.
Yeah. Because I hear that all the time. And people say, you are the brand. I said, no. I say, well, you are more than the brand. So what's your story is a good question and kind of tied to the brand. But it seems so general. Like, how do we hone that in?
Yeah, where do we even begin? That's great. Well, once again, we've got 3 points, man, just to make it memorable and dig into it. And the first one definitely ties back to this Kung Fu Panda picture. But here's how I like to phrase it. The stuff that you think doesn't matter matters. So these things about your story, do you think, oh, dude, that doesn't feel relevant to anything?
Okay.
Let's talk about some of those unique details, and what if they do actually matter and can be brought to the table. I'll use a couple examples. First is to think back to what made you get into this business in the first place. What was the driving force? A lot of times when we've lost our fizz, it's you get a little bit older and it just becomes routine. But was there something when you were younger, when you first thought, oh, dude, I have this passion and I want to pursue this? What was that thing that was driving you back then? And is there a hook to it? Now, I recognize, though, for a lot of people to be like, well, no, it wasn't anything special. I was in school or even sometimes like my parents just said, this is what you're going to do. So I just started doing it. And, you got to make money. It was just a job. Maybe it felt like that from the beginning. Okay, so let's go back even further. What are you into when you're not working? What is something that you're passionate about? And you think, oh yeah, it has nothing to do with work, but maybe, I like having a sense of humor, joking around, or maybe I like dogs, but who cares about that? Like, dude, these unique things that you think don't matter are things that connect with humanity. People want to know this about you, and it makes you different, and it gives your customers a handle on who you are. And I think the more we bring that to the table, the more that connection can be made.
That's funny. I'm thinking about a resume, like someone's writing out their resume, and one of the things that they might write out is like, okay, I used to, or I run marathons, and I'm thinking to myself, well, why does that matter? Like, why should I even add that? But it was the interesting story with that is previously I was working with my brother-in-law, and we were going through a stack of resumes to hire someone. And I remember this one resume out of stack about 50 resumes. This one really stood out, and at the very bottom, she put Boston Marathon, and I grabbed it out of the pile, and I read it out loud. I said, Boston Marathon. And I remember him going, yeah, Boston Marathon. I go, no, we got to hire this girl. And he's like, why? She runs marathons. He's like, so? I'm like, oh, man. And I didn't run marathons back then, but I knew that to run a Boston, or to even qualify for the Boston Marathon, you have to overcome such huge hurdles to achieve it. Just a physical strain and the pain you have to endure, and the emotional toughness and the will to keep going, the insane training hours and commitment devoted to being at your highest peak. And I remember saying to him, dude, if you can run a marathon, you can do and overcome anything.
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me of some of the friends we've had at my daughter's school. And they said that if they saw a PTA president on someone's resume, it would instantly get them hired. No matter what the job is, no matter what the position, dude, just when you think of similar, like a marathon, if you could handle all the parents and the teachers and the kids and all the challenges that go with that with no budget, and you just figure it out, it's almost like, dude, you're hired. This is a significant thing that you bring to the table. But for so many people, it'll be like, oh yeah, that's this side thing I do when when I'm not at work. It's not really, doesn't really matter. It's not significant. And the truth is, humanity cares about that kind of stuff. That uniqueness, that something different about you connects to people. And we want to know. And you're not just someone who sells coffee, or you're not just this product. You're this real person that's behind it, and people connect with that.
That's good. So what you think doesn't matter matters. So like we might just be overlooking at some of the qualities that we have, or we don't even know that is special. But how do we know that? What do we do? How do we search that and go, okay, maybe this is important for my brand, or maybe this, like, how do you distinguish that?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. It's especially when you think about if it's overlooked quality, how do I even see it? I think part of it starts with look at yourself outside the context of work.
Oh,
like
good.
if you what are the things that ignite a spark in you? Even if you weren't being paid, you'd be like, this is what I'm all about. And the things that I love and get excited about, in my normal life. And then secondly, I think it's about getting feedback. Look around to people that are close to you. Ask, what are some of the unique qualities you see in me? The things that I just take for granted. They say that self-awareness is just an openness to feedback. We might think we're so self-aware and we don't have any blind spots, but the truth is you only can be self-aware as you get that feedback and you're hearing from people close to you to speak into those aspects of your life. But for me, I love going back to Kung Fu Panda. I love the fact that he was fat, this weird quality that we think is the last thing that makes him a Dragon Warrior, ended up being his secret weapon. When the bad guy tries to do a secret move on him, it only tickles him. It's just so hilarious that even the fact that he falls down the stairs ends up being one of his secret kung fu moves, dude, squishing the guy on every step. So, dude, the fact these are qualities that we wouldn't think we bring to the table in terms of work. We would think, they might even feel like weaknesses to us. But if we're willing to pay attention, those things that don't look like they matter huge. And I can't tell you how much that's just good news for people like me who are fat, man. It's like that it could be our superpower.
Yeah, dude. For all the listeners out there and with all shapes and sizes, dude, it's apologies.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, man.
Yeah, we're kidding.
And actually, to be serious, that leads to this next point. The second point is, don't run from the tough parts of your story. The tough parts of your story are significant, and we sometimes, if there's been a challenge or a difficulty, we'd rather just sweep it under the rug and not bring it up or pretend like it never happened. But the truth is, that shapes your story, and people will connect with you. I love the Pixar line that they say about their characters. People don't connect with your successes. If you're like, I just graduated first in my class and, married a supermodel wife, like that's just my story. People will be like,
no, dude, that's my story.
Yeah, dude, you know what? And that's what people don't connect with that, dude.
Oh.
They're like, they're jealous of it maybe, but they don't feel like the strong connection. But congratulations. But the truth is,
I'm lying about being first in my class, but the supermodel's real.
Cheers, what's up? But dude, the point being, like, when you say, you know what, I had to go through the fire and I've overcome some major obstacles, people connect with that part of your story. They'll connect with your struggles. They'll connect with your failures. And we don't need to hide that about our story. We should bring that to the table and let that be what defines us. I think I heard a crazy story of a guy who suffered a massive professional failure. And he, to the point that he thought, I'm never going to get another job. Everyone's going to know how brutal this was and how this mistake that I made. And then shockingly, he was brought in for an interview and they're like, and he partly was wondering, why am I even here? Why would you even consider me as a possible candidate? And they're like, we heard about this massive failure and we believe there's so much value in what you learned going through that. And that's why we want you. We want someone who's gleaned that type of experience and been through it. And if you've made it through a fire, you have a lot you can teach us about how to go forward, which it's surprising. It feels wrong, but those, I guess I think of like older people. Why are they always so wise? Because they've already made all the mistakes and they've learned from it. And so don't be afraid to recognize what are some of the things you've been through? What are some of the challenges? How have you navigated it? And let that be part of the story you're telling.
That's so good. That reminds me of, because I don't fail, so I don't have any failure stories.
But you've heard of other
people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell maybe a story of my kids.
You're a great father.
But my kids are older now, and they're both one's just graduated college and one's a junior, and we had to go through that whole process of college applications. They're trying to gather these very significant stories that kind of shape them or something that would make an impression on the college administration. So I asked my daughter, like, what are you going to write about? And she said, yeah, I'm going to write about the most impactful thing that happened to me. I go, yeah, what was that? And she said, getting rejected. I'm like, what? And I remember that was a pretty significant turning point when she wanted to get into this art school, a high school, really, really bad. And she auditioned for it. She worked really hard. And they said, no, you weren't good enough to get into this school. So that's what she wanted to write about.
It's so good, man. And it really just comes back to, in life, so much of it is, what problem are you solving? We're solving problems. And so if we're constantly sweeping those challenges and difficulties under the rug and trying to run away from it, the reality, we should embrace the fact that it's made us a great problem solver. And in our business, in our work, in the stuff that we're trying to do, we're hopefully solving those types of problems for people. And that the experiences that we've had, the failures that we've had, have set us up to be great problem solvers in our work.
Yeah, dude, that's so good, because for the essay that she wrote, that wasn't the end of the story. The failure was not the end of the story, because she ended up getting in the next year. And that's what the essay was about.
Which perfectly leads us to this third point. And I love this so much, is that you're the writer of this story. You get to be the writer. You get to choose what parts of the story you're highlighting. You get to choose how the dots are connected. And I hope, don't underestimate the power that you have as the writer of your own story. You know, people, a lot of times, they have these lame narratives that they think are their story. And we even use that phrase. People go, oh, it's the story of my life. And it's usually in a very negative way. You know, story of my life is every time I get my hopes up, I end up disappointed. Story of my life, every time I think that next big deal is going to come through, it falls apart. I was like, really? That you think that's the story of your life? Why would you write that story? Why would you frame it and characterize it that way? Because I guarantee I can tell you a different story. We can look at your circumstances, and the story of your life is how you've overcome those obstacles. The story of your life is how you've never quit. And what if you looked at your story and tried to connect the dots in a totally different way? I'll tell you one of my favorite examples of this. My friend, he works as an electrician at this big power plant. And before that, though, he was a massage therapist.
What?
Dude, it's like the last thing people would think is, how is this guy who is a massage therapist and end up working as an electrician? How does that even happen? And you think those things have nothing in common. But he said, actually, if you think about it, the key to massage is finding where those places of tension are and figuring out what the root of it is and solving it. And it's the same thing with electricity. You get to the cause of anything that might be blocking that flow. And in both cases, he said, his job is summed up as one word. He's a troubleshooter.
Oh,
and so suddenly he's qualified for all these different types of jobs. When the common denominator, he can walk into any context and go, yo, I'm the best troubleshooter for this job. Whether it's massage, whether it's electricity. Dude, cut to him in the UN helping troubleshoot a peace negotiation. He can do anything. But he chose to define the story of his life by these strengths that are actually the common denominator that have led him through all kinds of different experiences.
That's good, because we were talking about the fizz in the beginning, and I lost that fizz, and I was doing this thing that just brought no joy, and I said to my wife, I am dying inside. Those were the actual words, and that led to a change, and it became my new story. Like, I can talk about how negative it was in the corporate world for me, and how much I hated the corporate structure and the politics and the daily grind and the lack of autonomy, the lack of leadership. There's no purpose. And that could have been my story, but that led to a different story, the one that I get to tell now.
Yeah, the story of your life is how that launched you into something brand new. And I love it. It's sad, even when I hear you talk about that, it just breaks my heart, because you're one of the most alive people I know, and the idea that you were dying inside, that we almost lost you.
Yeah.
And that's why we take this so seriously.
Yeah.
That this is We can't go out like that.
Yeah, because I'm pretty fizzy, man.
You got the fizz, dude.
Yeah,
I
you
agree.
take that cap off, and I'm ready to explode.
I love it. You know what that just reminded me of is looking back at our time in London, where my family and I moved to London to do some work, and I remember when we first got there, we would talk about what an amazing city it was, and just this the whole world lives there. Literally every nation of the world has people living in London. And we talked about it. It's like the capital of the world, man. Like it's like a magical, almost like heavenly city. And I would describe people that feeling when we first moved there in January, in the dead of winter. It was like foggy and overcast and freezing cold. And we'd be talking about how magical this city is. And the people we'd talk to would say, wow, I remember I used to feel that way about London. Like that's what I felt when I first moved here. And little by little, the world just wears you down and takes that away from you. It can run you into the ground, but you have to come back to what did you feel when you first moved here? What was that thing that used to bring that spark to the work that you're doing? And don't lose that, man. Fight for that and keep that part of your story alive.
Yeah, write your own story.
Dude, come on.
To summarize, for the listeners out there, don't underestimate the power of your story. You may take it for granted, but the unique details that brought you to this point will differentiate you from the competition, don't you think?
Yeah.
That's it. And if you do this right, it can bring that fizz and purpose back into your life.
That's why we're talking about this, man. We really believe that story can drive everything you do. And so just to recap, number one, the stuff you think doesn't matter, it matters a lot. So look in the mirror. Get that feedback from people close to you. Or even, I like to think of movies like looking in the mirror. Look at those aspects of the Kung Fu Panda characteristics that actually make you Dragon Warrior. Number two, don't run from the tough parts. Dude, it actually makes me think of the movie Dunkirk, when they turn the boat around and head back. And he says, you can't run from this, boy. Don't run from those challenges and the parts of your story where you've been through the fire. Because, dude, it's turned you into a problem solver. And that's what we need. Bring that to your work. Let people connect to that part of your story. And then last, remember you're the writer. Connect the dots. Highlight the things that matter to you. Highlight the things that have shaped your story and choose to build that narrative. The story of your life is an awesome thing. It's not disappointments. It's how you've overcome the obstacles.
Wow. The more we talk about this, the more I get excited. And there's so much to share. And I really hope that listeners are getting excited as well about your story, because it matters and it will help you get to the next level.
The reason we talk about movies all the time is because it's a true story. That's what I'm such a believer. This isn't just a cartoon. And when we talk about Kung Fu Panda, just remember the whole movie, they're trying to figure out the secret to being the Dragon Warrior, only to discover there is no secret ingredient. The characteristics that make you powerful are actually hidden right in your story. It's these overlooked qualities that you might not even notice that could become your secret weapon.
That's good. So maybe we can start searching for what that secret weapon is. And let's redefine and retell our story, our powerful story of our uniqueness. I think it will change everything. Hey, I really hope that this episode was truly helpful for you. We would love to get to know you and hear from you, so you can just leave us a comment on the iTunes review or contact us directly by going to bossmediagroup.com. That's BOS1S mediagroup.com. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening, and remember to always make it matter. Bye for now.